Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's Technical Thursdays IBM FileNetP8 Loading Web Seminar hosted by the Actuate Xenos Group. This program is being recorded. If you're having any difficulty logging into the web presentation, you may reach VisionCast Web Technical Support at 888-334-0282, or you can call 719-457-2792. Now, all audience lines will be in a listen-only mode during the program. However, you are encouraged to submit web questions throughout the conference as you think of them by clicking on the Q&A link at the top of your screen. A box will appear on the screen in front of you. Simply type in your question and then click on the Ask button. Our speaker will be addressing web questions at the conclusion of the presentation, and any web questions that are not addressed within our available time frame will be answered by way of a post-conference email. Now, to view today's web presentation at full screen, which is highly recommended, especially during the live demonstration, please press the F5 tab on your keyboard or simply locate the Maximize Screen icon located in the lower right corner of your screen console. Simply press F5 again if you'd like to ask a web question. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Joining us today is Will Davis, Sales Engineer at Xenos. Will has been in the information solutions industry for over 10 years and has worked at Xenos for over 8 in a number of capacities, including professional services, product development, product management, and most recently, sales and marketing. He has designed and implemented systems for financial services, insurance, ports, manufacturing, healthcare, and telecommunications. Xenos designs, stores, and delivers high-volume print and electronic documents for top-tier organizations in financial services, insurance, telecommunications, and utilities. And now for opening remarks and introductions, I'm happy to turn the program over to Mr. Will Davis. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Jerry. Really appreciate the introduction here. Can I just go ahead and flip it over to sharing my desktop now? Is that what I'm doing?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so, sorry, nobody panic. Okay, so in the last couple of training sessions, we went over how to transform AFP to PDF, and we also mined some data out of that using the XFT. In this training session, what we're going to do is we're going to pull information out of the AFP, and then we're going to index it and load it into FileNetP8, IBM FileNetP8. So the first thing I'm going to do, just like I did last time, is I'm just going to add the solution from the configuration repository, which we set up a while ago. So we can see, if I go into this, we can see that everything that I've done previously has been set up. Transform AFP to PDF, we're splitting it out, writing it out, and then we're ending. So before we get into actually loading FileNetP8, there's obviously some things that we have to do, just more housekeeping items that we have to take care of. So we're going to go ahead and start doing those things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the FileNet server that we have set up here. On this server, we're running FileNet 5.0, and within it, we use it for testing, and we use it for whatever else. In this particular case, obviously, we're going to use it for the training purposes. So the first thing you want to do is actually set up the enterprise server environment so that it will be able to actually load FileNetP8. So we have the appropriate drivers to connect to the FileNetP8 web services and whatever else. So in order to do that, we need to go onto the FileNet server and copy over a number of jars. These jars are located under the FileNet installation directory /process engine/lib. And there's just 3 files here that we need to copy over here: stacks-api.jar, xlxpscanner.jar, and xlxpscannerutils.jar. So once you've copied those to whatever staging area you want to set up, you can just copy them into the enterprise server install directory under lib/extension. You can see that I've already done this prior to this training session, just to make it easier, but here are the 3 jar files. Next, what you'll want to do to continue setting up Enterprise Server is to set up the auth file. The auth file is located under the Xenos install directory. /lib. And the auth.conf is right there. So I'm just going to open that up in Alt-Edit. And we can see that we have some lines here. You can memorize these lines, or you can pause your screen and take a screenshot. But this is also located under the help. So if I just open up my help, I can go under help, go into help contents, and that'll open that up in your browser. So you can just navigate down into the FileNet section, the FileNet loader section. So third-party connectors, IBM, FileNetP8 loader. And is it under requirements? Or preparing FileNet? Oh, pre-configuration for FileNet, sorry. We can actually see the jar files that we require here, and we can also see where the auth file is located and also the lines. You can just copy and paste these into that auth file that I just showed you. Now that that's set up, just restart Enterprise Server, and it'll load those libraries into our class path, and it'll also ensure that these lines are loaded into our system as well. Next, what you'll have to do is you'll have to go into IBM and into IBM FileNet and actually set up the document class that you want to load into and the object store and whatever else. Obviously, you're going to have your own configuration set up already, but you'll want to go back in and maybe set up a document class. So in this particular case, we're working with the best bank example, and we can see that I have 4 indexes or columns or whatever you want to call them set up within there. I have account number, I have full name, and I have statement period. We're also going to see here is the XES load batch ID column, and that is used within our loader to actually manage the load. If you're loading 100,000 documents or 500,000 documents, you're not going to load all of those and then commit at the end. You're going to want to commit after maybe 1,000 or 1,500 or 2,000 or 10,000, just so that you have lower processing on the database and lower memory requirements on the database. So what this enables us to do is if it fails halfway through, maybe you're at 250,000 and you get a failure, this enables us to go back in and roll back if we need to, or actually just continue loading from where we left off. So that's what that's there for. And this is actually configurable, and I'll show you where that is shortly. So I set up this best bank document class. I set up these fields. Now what I need to do is I need to go back in Enterprise Server and actually start setting up the process flow and the transformation so that these fields are filled in appropriately. I'm just going to go back in Enterprise Server here, and I'm going to go into the transform AFP to PDF and go into the Xenos build technology. Hopefully you've been to previous training sessions or already checked out the last ones, and everything that's been set up already you're familiar with, but I do encourage you to go back and check those out if you want to. So I just need to check out the names, make sure that they're appropriate and actually matching to what I set up in the doc class. We can see that I have account num. That matches. Name actually needs to change to full name, so I'm just going to rename that. Double-click on name and rename it to full name. And I also am not pulling the statement period, so I'm just going to drag that over, put in statement period. Just quickly test it just to make sure that it's picking up, and it is. Great. Go into the next couple pages here. Just make sure that the next statement is picking it up as well, which it is. Okay, so I will close out of that, save it. And now I'll set up the indexer. There's a couple changes that need to occur within here. One, I need to enable the XFT indexing. I need to enable the custom property indexing, just to give it a file name. But I also need to modify the document naming itself. Since we had this set up to name before, we're probably going to want to change that to full name. If I go into XFT index, this is where I can actually choose the fields that I'm going to be indexing on. So if you had a lot of things you were pulling out, such as those columns or additional data within the AFP, we don't need to index on all of those. You just choose which ones you want to. I'm just going to choose account number. I'm going to choose full name and a statement period, of course. Over in the custom properties, this enables us to index based on additional properties that might not actually be within the document itself. So I'm just going to use the document number, but we could also put in constant values if we wanted to, or use field sections or whatever else. So I'm just going to, we have our own internal format here for just saying file name, and this is what's going to show up in P8. And I'm going to just use the document number .pdf. I'm going to apply that, and that's going to get added. Oh, I'm going to add that, rather. Oh, not good. Try that again here. That gets added. So that's changed. I'm also going to suppress duplicate entries just so that we don't make the index larger than it should be. I'm going to click Finish. We're done with that. And then, of course, the next thing we have to do is we actually have to choose what index we're going to write out. So I'm going to go into the index writer here and just drag that onto the flow. Double-click on it so I can set it up. We can go through the wizard, or we can just go into the properties here and use the on-demand options. And I'm going to write that out to the output directory. You'll notice that I'm actually using the on-demand index instead of the FileNet index there. The FileNet index is for older versions of FileNet before IBM took them over. We use the IBM on-demand format within our loader to actually load FileNet itself. So I'm just going to point this to the output directory. I'm going to call it output.idx. I'm going to click OK. And click OK. Stacked output. We're not stacking the output because this is P8. We're actually going to be loading these files individually, and we're going to include the path and the file name. The path and the file name being the path within the index file to the location of the document that we're going to be loading. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to save that. So that should be good, and if I click Execute, this will execute, and it'll we can see what's actually been created here. I'm going to go into the output directory, and we'll see all the files, and we'll see the output.idx file. And we can see that this looks fairly familiar if you're familiar with the IBM on-demand index format. You can see that I have account numbers, I have the full name, statement period, file name of one.pdf, and then the location of it. And then, of course, the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Okay, so that all looks good. We can now close out of that document transformation because we're done there. Next thing what we want to do is we actually want to set up the FileNet loader itself. I'm going to create a new directory here. I'm going to call it Components. Click OK. I actually should have created that under Web Training. And I'm just going to go New, as we've done before, New Component, Custom Components, third-party connectors, go into IBM, go into FileNet, and we'll choose the P8 loader. Go Next. Give it a name. Click Finish. And now we get brought up to the configuration of this P8 loader. So some of this might seem a bit daunting. There's a lot of options here, and we'll go through a lot of these. First thing you want to do is you actually want to set up the location of FileNet and how we're going to load it. So first we're going to give this a name. So P8 loader, or sorry, this is from the auth file that we set up. I go into that auth.config, and I'm just going to copy this. So this is how it knows to actually connect. The connection string is the location of the web services of FileNet. So just to save myself some typing and you watching me type and the possibility of making mistakes, I'll just copy and paste it here. So that's the location of the FileNet server that we were just on and the location of the web services. The the API configuration file itself, we don't actually need to use this because we're connecting to 5.0, but if you're using something lower, like 3.5, you would point this to the location of the install directory of FileNetP8, and you would point this to WCM API config.properties. In this particular case, because it's 5.0, and if you were running 4.0, you wouldn't have to fill this in either. Now for the domain, this is set up within FileNet itself. I'm going to point it to P8 domain, and of course a username and password, so that we can actually log into this system. So in our particular case, it's P8 admin and IBM FileNet P8 as the password. Yours is going to be different, hopefully, a little bit more secure than us. We're just going to give this a version of 5.0. So now this is actually, now that we've set up the connection, now we actually have to set up how we're going to load these documents into FileNetP8. First, we're going to give it a root folder. I log in. We can see that I've already set up a folder here for training and best bank. So the root folder is going to be for training. And the default folder, best bank. And now we have a document class. The document class we set up was best bank, and I showed that to you earlier, which had all the fields associated with it. And the object store is something that you're going to set up yourself within your P8 instance. So the P8 config object store. On type, we're going to be loading PDFs in this particular training session. And we're going to use the index file that we just created. I can point this to the index file now, which is what I'm going to do. But when we push it into a process flow, we'll actually utilize the index coming out of the document transformation. This, click OK. Now we're going to say that the index is the IBM format, of course. We can remove the spaces from the object store document class and the property names just because that might be a setting within FileNetP8 where it's automatically been removed. So we offer that option as well. Loading unfiled, this means that we're just going to load it unfiled, so we're not going to actually put it into a directory. In this particular case, we're putting it into fortraining/bestbank, but if you want to just load it into P8 and not really care about filing it under a specific directory, you would click this. Page queries, because of the way that we load, we have to worry about, sometimes people worry about versioning and whatever else, so we can just load things directly in, or we can actually version things as well. So querying, so what we do is if the versioning is actually set up so that you want to version documents, if they already exist, we have to do a query, and this just enables whether we're going to page the queries so that we're not pulling back like maybe 1,000 documents at a time based on search criteria, or whether we're just going to go into one. This default date format, this is for if you have dates within the index itself. So if you had like maybe a statement date or something along those lines, this tells us how it's actually formatted so that when we load it into P8, we know how to actually transform it into the format that P8 is actually expecting. This batch ID property, we showed this earlier when we looked at the best bank document class. This is the loader batch ID that you would set up so that you can keep track of loads and being able to roll back and whatever else. So those are the main things that you would set up within this. I'm also going to go over the audit file here. The audit file is going to tell you what was loaded into the repository, the GUIDs that came back, that what they were loaded as, and success stuff. So I'm going to save that as well. I'm going to save it to the output directory. I'm just going to give that a name of audit.txt and overwrite it. And we have some additional options that you can audit, such as batch ID, document name, doc ID, where it's going in the folders, etc. We also have a summary file, so I'm going to change that as well. I'm going to create create that as well, rather. I'm going to overwrite. Back up here, I'm going to click this to write text doc, because when we send an email later, I'm going to attach this audit file to it as well. Okay, so we've set up the summary file. The summary file is going to tell us what was loaded, etc. The auditing enables us to go back and see what was actually happening. And then we have some of these other things. And I'm just going to briefly go over these. You can find more stuff in the documentation, or you can email me if you want to know more about these. But continue option, if the document fails to load, do we continue on, or do we actually just quit everything? So if you're loading like maybe 500,000 documents, perhaps you don't want the entire load to fail just because one failed. Resource group options, if you wanted to load additional resources with the document itself. Buffered I/O is just how you want to write, so you play around with these numbers just so that as you're loading documents in, how often you're going to flush out the memory. Commit interval, when we talk about batch IDs and you talk about 500,000 documents or whatever else, this enables you to set up how many documents you're going to commit after. So if you maybe you want to commit after 1,000 or after 5,000 or whatever else, that's where you would set this. We can use the compression within P8 and ourselves to actually compress documents as we're loading them. This is where, when I was talking about versioning, and where we'd have to query to see if a document already exists and whether you actually want to version it. So these are options around that. And we have advanced data handling. I'm actually not quite sure what this does. Reliable transfer. This will set it up so that if something fails, continue on. So if the connection to P8 fails, maybe you don't want the entire batch to fail. Maybe you want to try after 5 minutes or after a minute. You'll notice that this is actually in a lot of our components, just because things do happen. I'm going to set this up to throw an exception. Okay, so we set up this P8 loader, and now we actually have to go into the process flow and hopefully make this happen, make this load right after the document transformation occurs. So we're just going to throw it into the process flow. And I also connect that to the end. And now I just need to set up how it's actually going to work. So I'm just going to show the mappings here. And I'm going to pull it from the index. I'm just going to rename this to index. We already went over these mappings in previous training sessions, so please view that stuff. And I'm going to set this up here to index. Click OK, and click OK. Oh, result text docs. This is the audit log that we spoke about earlier, so we're going to push that out to xdoc logger. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to set up the email so that we can actually email when it's successful, and we're going to send the send an email, send the audit file rather. So I'm just going to drag this on here, single use, connect that into the flow, and then just like everything else, we'll go through the wizard here. The mail server that we have, I just have one set up here pretty simply. You guys can download it yourself. It's called Free SMTP Server. Basically, it just acts as an SMTP server or a relay, if you will. So that's on localhost. I'm going to go next. Next, I set up the from email address and the to email address. So I'm going to send this from training@actuate.com. And I'm going to send it to myself. And add in a subject, file successfully processed. A body, file success, same thing. You can put in variables if you wanted to here. In this particular case, we're just putting in constants. And whether the message content type is going to be attachment or in body or both. I'm going to say both, and we're going to give the name of the attachment, so audit.xml. I click next. Username and password not really required for this mail server, just because it's a simple one that I installed myself. And then we can view some metadata associated with this. Okay, so I'm going to click Finish, and hopefully everything's set up properly. Just going to quickly make sure that we are sending the appropriate thing here, the xdoc logger. It's correct. Okay, save that. And now I'm going to go into the So now we've set up this process flow. I'm going to do what we did before, which is essentially just listen for files on that directory. And as files are dropped in, they're going to run through this transformation. It's going to be indexed and hopefully loaded into P8. So I'm going to go into here. I'm going to erase everything. I'm going to go into my samples directory and just drag over my SBank AFP. And that's going to hopefully get picked up, and hopefully it's not going to error out. So while that's running, I'm just going to quickly go through everything that we've done over the last 3 training sessions just so it's fresh in everybody's mind. We're going to pick up that AFP file. We're going to go into this AFP to PDF. We're pulling out some fields using the Xenos field technology. We're going to index those fields, going to break apart the documents so that it's multiple documents. There's 15 statements in that AFP file. We're going to create a P8 index, and then we're just going to generate PDFs. Next, we're going to split those PDFs because we're generating 15 PDFs. We want to loop through each of those and write them out separately. We're going to load them into P8, and then we're going to send off an email saying that it was successful. So hopefully this is completed. So I'm just going to stop this. And if I go into here and refresh, hopefully there will be documents and I didn't mess up anywhere. But it looks like I did mess up somewhere, which is always something that can occur when you kind of make things happen on the fly, so to speak. But luckily we have logs and we can go in and actually see what's going on. File cannot be accessed. That's always good. We wrote up the files. So the loader is complaining because it can't actually access files that were created. I wish this error actually occurred before I went into this training session because it would have been really easy to fix. But luckily, the logger is working appropriately and it's occurring. So I'm just going to quickly go into the transformation here. I'm going to run this just to make sure that everything is working correctly. And then I'm going to go into the loader. I'm just going to execute the loader from here. And we're going to see, hopefully, that works appropriately. Oh, I know what happened. What happened was when I went into this file event, when I went to write it out here, I'm writing out different names. So I'm just going to go into here. Because I used append unique ID, we can actually go in here. It doesn't actually know how to read these. So if I look at the output directory, we can see these, which was obviously just created. But we can also see these, which was created by the file process. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these again. And I'm going to go back in here and not apply the unique ID because the indexer doesn't know about this because we're writing up the files afterwards. It doesn't actually know that we're appending additional information onto the file name. So I'm just going to go none. Click OK. And now that's going to write out the files as the indexer expects it to. Now I'm going to go into the go back into the events. I'm going to start this back up. And I'm going to go back into my input directory. I'm going to restart this. And that's going to run through, and hopefully everything will be successful. Cross our fingers this time, folks. Okay, so we're creating these PDFs here. We're creating the audit and the summary, whatever else. And if I go into P8 here and refresh, I'm going to see multiple documents because we ran it the first time, the PA loader by itself, and then we ran it again through this, through the process flow itself. But if I click on this, hopefully it'll bring up the PDF. But it's Adobe and everything's awesome when you work with Adobe. So I'm just going to download this. Okay, so that was downloaded to the directory. And if I go into that directory, I should see that one.pdf. created at 11:36. If I open it up, it'll be April Black statement. Now, if I go into my email, I should hopefully see that email. Awesome. 11:36, I received an email saying that the file was successfully processed. And I also received an audit file. If I open that up, I can see additional data within it. I can see the batch ID. I can see the document name, see the doc ID that it was actually stored as within P8. And I can see additional information around where it was stored. So everything's working great, luckily, after that little misstep there. My apologies. But as you can imagine, I am setting this up in front of you, and errors are going to occur every now and then. But luckily, they're easy to fix based on logs and based on how we actually set up the process flows and how you can logically go through the process flow to see how things are working. So that's essentially the end of this training. We loaded P8. We sent off a notification email. Are there any questions? Oh, right. Tracy's phone isn't working because well, I actually have to read out these questions myself. First question is, over the last 3 sessions, you've shown us how to break down AFP to individual PDFs and load them into P8. Is there any functionality in Xenos which allows efficient storage of that PDF in P8 in a similar way to IBM CMOD? There actually is. We can store the PDF, or we can store AFP itself. And when I was going through it, I showed you how you can set up resource storage, how you would handle resourcing within the document itself, or when loading in a P8. So within Xenos software, we actually have something called PDF DSR, which stands for PDF Document Storage Reduction, which essentially does what you would do with AFP, where you have resource files so that you're not duplicating resources across documents. You're just creating one resource bundle, and then you can call that within. So you'd have to call Xenos afterwards to actually bundle that back together, but we have seen 90 to 95% compression rates on PDF itself. The next question was, can you store more than just PDF? I actually just mentioned this in the last question, but where we could actually store AFP as well. I mean, typically people probably wouldn't store AFP within FileNet, but if you can do transformation on the fly outside of it, you could store AFP within there. You could store whatever you want, really. Our loader, and the way our loader works is you can store Word documents, you can store any type of file. We don't really care about what type it is. The next question, in the example that you showed, all the docs went to one object store in the same loading session. Can you load the documents to different object stores? Yeah, absolutely. We have customers right now that are utilizing multiple object stores because obviously you can't put more than a certain amount of information into each object store efficiently. So if we look at the index itself, we actually have additional internal fields that we can put in to say, go into this object store. For this particular document, if you wanted to just put an entire load into one document store, you can actually put a variable into the loader itself to choose that as well. So it's entirely up to how you want to do it. If you wanted to split up an entire load across multiple object stores, you could by modifying the index file, and you could do that through those constants that we set up. Or you can utilize the loader if you just wanted to go into one object store and just use a variable in there. The next question is, you send an email when it's successful, but what about on failure? Yeah, it's really easy for me to set up an on success email just because I can just put it in the process flow. But if there is an error, we actually have the on error thing up here on the top right, which enables us to drag process flows on top of that. So anything that can happen within a process flow, you can do when an error occurs within this process flow. So if you want to send off an email, it would be the exact same step. Only you would link up this catch on error with that process flow. All right, so that is all. We go through a couple more slides here. Yeah, so I guess I'm going to be going over this stuff as well. The next training session, just with all the last training sessions, first Thursday of the month, it'll be on, the next one will be June 7th, so please join us on that date. We'll be going over transformation and retrieval from the repository. There were a few questions about storing more than PDF within the repository itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you how you could actually use Enterprise Server to do the querying and transformation of those documents. So it's actually really convenient that those questions came up. So we'll show you how you can do that using Enterprise Server. If you have any questions or ideas for future training sessions, please, again, email me. We'd like to take into account what you want to see instead of just what I think you should learn and what I think you guys should see. My email address is up on the screen. You can go to our website. You can check out our blog. I'm the main contributor on our blog, but we also have marketing in there as well, so that's always fun. You can also follow us on Twitter, or you can even email us info@xenos.com. Is that it? All right. Well, thank you again, and yeah, feel free to email me. Pass this over to Jerry now.
Thank you so much. This does conclude today's Technical Thursdays IBM FileNetP8 Loading Web Seminar hosted by the Actuate Xenos Group. Thank you again, everyone, for attending, and have a wonderful day.